The camera's red light blinked on, signaling the start of a live broadcast that millions would witness in real time. The studio buzzed with a charged electricity, the air thick with anticipation. Jasmine Crockett sat poised, her gaze sharp and unyielding, the very image of determination and intellect sharpened by years of relentless advocacy. Across from her sat Donald Trump Jr., confident as ever, his usual smirk barely hiding the calculated composure he wore like armor. For weeks, Jasmine had been preparing for this moment, piecing together fragments of truth others ignored or buried beneath partisan noise. Tonight, she held a revelation so damning, so tightly concealed, that its unveiling promised to shatter the carefully curated facade Trump Jr. had cultivated for years. As the host nodded to Jasmine, she leaned forward, voice steady but charged with urgency. "Mr. Trump, you've consistently denied your involvement in the offshore accounts linked to campaign funds, but new evidence has surfaced, documents verified by independent auditors that directly connect you to these financial activities." The words landed like a thunderclap. The studio fell into stunned silence, cameras zooming in on Trump Jr.'s face as the first cracks began to show. His usual smirk faltered, eyes darting briefly before narrowing defensively. His voice rose sharply, a brittle edge cutting through the tension. "That's categorically false. Those claims are baseless attacks, but the damage was done." Social media erupted instantly, hashtags trended, clips looped endlessly, and commentators scrambled to analyze every nuance of his reaction. The live audience's collective breath caught as the man once seen as untouchable visibly unraveled, the weight of truth pressing upon him like an unforgiving tide. The moment was electric, raw, and unmistakably pivotal. In mere seconds, the stakes had risen beyond political theater. This was a reckoning unfolding live before an entire nation. The revelation Jasmine had just unleashed was more than a bombshell. It was a seismic tremor that shook the foundations of a carefully constructed narrative. As the studio lights glared and cameras relentlessly captured every flicker of emotion, the truth began to unfold with a cold precision that left little room for denial. Jasmine's voice cut through the charged silence like a scalpel, steady and unyielding. "These aren't just anonymous accusations or partisan smears. This is hard evidence, verified through multiple channels, documents, bank records, and third-party audits that confirm your involvement in a complex web of offshore accounts. Accounts directly tied to campaign funds and shell companies designed to obfuscate financial flows." Across from her, Donald Trump Jr. shifted in his seat, his carefully rehearsed defenses scrambling to recalibrate in real time. The smirk that had once signaled confidence now gave way to a grimace. He clenched his jaw, fingers tightening on the armrest as he tried to regain control. "This is a witch hunt," he spat, voice laced with venom. "Fabricated lies from political opponents desperate to tear down a legacy." But Jasmine was relentless. "This isn't about politics. This is about accountability. When money meant to support democratic processes is funneled through offshore accounts to hide its origins, that undermines the very integrity of our elections. You owe the American people answers." The tension in the room grew thicker. The host, sensing the magnitude of the moment, pressed for specifics. "Ms. Crockett, can you elaborate on how these accounts were linked to Mr. Trump's campaign?" Jasmine nodded, pulling out a tablet displaying key documents. "Certainly. Here we see transaction logs dated from 2016 through 2019. Funds were routed through multiple layers of shell corporations, ultimately landing in accounts controlled by entities linked to the Trump Organization. The complexity is designed to confuse and conceal, but the trail is unmistakable." A murmur rippled through the studio audience, whispers of disbelief mixed with murmurs of recognition. The pieces were fitting together in the public's mind. forming a picture that had long been hinted at, but never so thoroughly exposed. Donald Trump Jr.'s rebuttal grew more desperate. Even if these documents exist, they're taken out of context or outright forged. There's no proof I authorized any such transfers. You're attacking me without evidence. Jasmine's gaze hardened. Authorization isn't always in ink. Power is exercised through influence, instructions given behind closed doors, and silence from those who benefit. We've heard testimony from former employees who witnessed irregular financial activity and were pressured to stay quiet. The room's atmosphere shifted, no longer just a televised debate, but a courtroom of public opinion. Jasmine's revelation was no longer abstract. It was grounded in tangible evidence and first-hand accounts. The veil of secrecy was lifting outside. The studio, the revelation triggered a firestorm. News outlets scrambled to verify the documents. Social media ignited with outrage and support alike. Legal experts debated the implications. Political strategists recalculated alliances, and citizens grappled with a wave of betrayal and disbelief. Back on air, the dynamic between Jasmine and Trump Jr. grew ever more charged. He launched into a series of attacks, calling her a political opportunist, accusing her of fabricating stories to boost her profile. But Jasmine held firm, her voice unwavering. The truth is not a weapon, it is a responsibility. And today, that responsibility demands transparency. As the seconds ticked by, the cracks in Trump Jr.'s defenses widened. His responses became clipped, his gestures sharper but hollow. The public, watching live, witnessed a man grappling with the consequences of years spent in shadows finally dragged into the unforgiving light. Jasmine leaned in, her tone both fierce and resolute. This isn't just about one person or one campaign. This is about a system that allows power to evade scrutiny. And I stand here to say, no more. The host attempted to steer the conversation towards policy, but the momentum was too strong. The revelation had captured the collective attention, and the nation's focus was locked on this moment of confrontation. In the hours that followed, transcripts of the exchange flooded news feeds. Analysts dissected Jasmine's evidence, confirming its authenticity and significance. Political commentators predicted seismic shifts in the ongoing investigations surrounding the Trump Organization. Meanwhile, Trump Jr. retreated into a defensive media blitz, releasing carefully worded statements denying wrongdoing and accusing his accusers of a coordinated smear campaign. But the damage was already done. The narrative had shifted irreversibly. For Jasmine, this was more than a victory. It was a call to arms. Her revelation had pierced through layers of deception and compelled a reckoning. The truth, once hidden behind legal jargon and political spin, now stood exposed in the harsh glare of public scrutiny. As the night deepened, the nation grappled with the fallout. The fragile threads of trust in political leadership strained under the weight of evidence. And in living rooms, cafes, and online forums, a single question echoed: what happens next? Jasmine Crockett, poised and unshaken, had ignited a spark, a reminder that even in the most entrenched systems, truth can find a voice, and that voice can topple giants. The stage was set for a battle far from over. But in this live moment of revelation, one thing was clear: the era of hidden truths was coming to an end. Asterisk Trump Jr.'s actions, but also on a deeper pattern, one that had defined his public persona for years. To truly grasp the impact of this confrontation, one had to understand the history of deflection that Trump Jr. had cultivated with meticulous care, a pattern etched in public memory through a series of well-documented encounters with the media, Congress, and the court of public opinion. From the earliest days of the Trump political saga, Donald Jr. emerged as a master of strategic denial. His instinct was never to confront allegations head-on, but to dismiss them with a mixture of bluster, ridicule, and aggressive counterattacks. When questions arose about his involvement in controversial meetings or questionable financial dealings, his response was often swift and rehearsed. Paint the accusations as partisan attacks, smear the accuser's credibility, or invoke conspiracy. Theories designed to muddy the waters. It was a defensive dance, choreographed to avoid accountability and preserve an image of untouchable strength. One of the most telling examples came during the investigations into Russian interference in the 2016 election. Faced with allegations that he had met with Russian operatives to seek damaging information on political opponents, Trump Jr. released a statement declaring the meeting primarily about adoption policy, a carefully calibrated deflection. That sidestepped the core accusations. Over time, as more details emerged, his narrative shifted, yet the pattern remained. Deny, distract, and delay. This playbook served him well for years. Whether on social media platforms where he wielded Twitter like a weapon, or in televised interviews where he sparred with reporters, Trump Jr.'s strategy was to maintain control by refusing to engage directly with inconvenient truths. Instead, he painted himself as a victim of relentless attacks, a stalwart defender of his family's legacy against a hostile political establishment. But Jasmine's revelation disrupted this rhythm. The evidence she presented was not speculative or hearsay. It was meticulously documented, independently verified, and too precise to be spun away. For the first time in public view, Trump Jr. faced a challenge that pierced the armor of deflection. The patterns of denial, once a shield, now seemed brittle and exposed. As the studio cameras captured the unfolding drama, viewers could see the shift. His usual rehearsed responses faltered. His voice, once steady and forceful, edged toward frustration. The rehearsed smokescreens faltered in the face of mounting evidence, and the cracks deepened with every pointed question Jasmine posed. Outside the studio, the media dissected his history of evasion. Political analysts recalled moments where Trump Jr. had deflected blame onto staff members, blamed the media for misinterpretation, or invoked legal technicalities to avoid revealing details. Each instance, once seen as a savvy political maneuver, now took on the tone of a carefully maintained facade ready to crumble. Jasmine did not merely recount these past episodes for dramatic effect. She connected the dots, showing how a pattern of denial had shielded not just Donald Jr., but an entire network of influence. By exposing this, she forced the public to reconsider not only the immediate scandal, but the systemic culture of secrecy and manipulation that had flourished unchecked. The emotional intensity in the studio grew as Jasmine laid bare the consequences of this deflection. When accountability is avoided, she said quietly but firmly, truth becomes a casualty and justice is deferred. This isn't just about one man's legacy. It's about the erosion of trust in our institutions. Trump Jr.'s response became increasingly defensive, tinged with impatience. His words, sharp and clipped, sought to shift the focus back onto Jasmine and her motives. This is a political witch hunt, he insisted. Attempts to smear my family and silence opposition through baseless allegations. But the audience, both live and at home, sensed the tension between truth and evasion. The emotional undercurrent was unmistakable. A man who had long wielded denial as a weapon now found himself disarmed, grappling with an exposure he could neither spin away nor silence. Political commentators framed this moment as a potential turning point. A history of deflection was no longer sufficient protection. The evidence Jasmine presented was a mirror reflecting years of obfuscation and resistance. The conversation shifted from whether Trump Jr. was involved to how deep the networks of concealment extended. Social media erupted with reactions that echoed this shift. Supporters of Jasmine praised her bravery and relentless pursuit of truth, while critics of Trump Jr. highlighted this confrontation as emblematic of a broader failure. of political accountability. Memes and clips of the exchange circulated rapidly, amplifying the drama and intensifying public scrutiny. Yet beneath the surface, the emotional weight on both sides was palpable. For Trump Jr., the pattern of denial was more than political strategy, was a way to maintain power and control amid an unforgiving spotlight. For Jasmine, breaking through that pattern was an act of courage and conviction, a demand that truth be prioritized over legacy or influence. The studio host tried to steer the conversation toward policy implications, but the undercurrent of personal stakes and ideological battle was too strong. This was not just a debate about facts. It was a confrontation between entrenched power structures and those seeking to dismantle them. As the chapter unfolded, the narrative wove through moments of heated exchange and quiet reflection. Jasmine's calm but piercing questions met Trump Jr.'s increasingly fraught denials. The dialogue was sharp, politically charged, and emotionally raw, capturing the complexity of a man wrestling with a legacy now fraught with cracks. This chapter ended on a tense note, with the studio audience and viewers worldwide left to ponder the implications. The history of deflection had met its reckoning, but the battle for truth and accountability was far from over. Jasmine's revelation had cracked open a door into a deeper reckoning, one that promised to reshape political discourse and challenge long-standing power dynamics. The stakes were clear. Beneath the surface of political spectacle lay a complex struggle for integrity, truth, and justice. And in that struggle, the pattern of denial was no longer a shield, but a vulnerability waiting to be exploited. As the cameras faded from this chapter, the nation was left holding its breath, awaiting the next chapter in a story that was just beginning to unfold. The moment Jasmine Crockett's revelation reverberated through the studio, the media frenzy ignited with a force that seemed almost unstoppable. What had begun as a pointed confrontation on a political talk show quickly exploded into a nationwide spectacle, transforming a single televised exchange into a defining moment of public scrutiny and political upheaval. The live broadcast, originally intended to provide a platform for debate, had morphed into a high-stakes battleground. Journalists across networks scrambled to analyze the documents Jasmine had unveiled, while newsrooms buzzed with urgent discussions about the potential fallout. Headlines appeared within minutes. Bombshell evidence exposes Trump Jr.'s financial secrets, and Jasmine Crockett shatters Trump Jr.'s defenses live on air. The story dominated primetime coverage, shifting the political landscape overnight. Social media platforms became the digital arena where the drama played out in real time. Hashtags related to the revelation surged to the top of trending lists. Millions shared clips of Trump Jr.'s visibly shaken response, dissecting every word, every gesture, every stumble. The exchange became fodder for memes, commentary, and fierce debate, reflecting the deep divisions within the public and political spheres alike. Amid the noise, media pundits weighed in with sharp analysis. Some hailed Jasmine as a fearless truth-teller, applauding her unyielding commitment to accountability. Others defended Trump Jr., framing him as a target of relentless political persecution. This polarization underscored the broader cultural battle lines drawn across the nation, where facts were often filtered through ideological lenses. The studio atmosphere during the live broadcast mirrored this intensity. The host struggled to maintain control as emotions flared, voices rose, and the dialogue escalated beyond the usual parameters of political discourse. Jasmine's calm but unwavering delivery contrasted starkly with Trump Jr.'s single quotes, growing frustration and defensiveness. The audience's reactions, a mix of gasps, murmurs, and whispered conversations, revealed the electric tension saturating the room. Beyond the studio walls, the revelation triggered waves of reaction from political leaders, activists, and legal experts. Statements poured in from senators and representatives, some condemning the alleged financial misconduct and calling for investigations. others cautioning against rushing to judgment without due process. Advocacy groups seized the moment to demand transparency and reform, leveraging the public's heightened attention. Legal analysts appeared on panels to unpack the significance of the evidence. They explained how the use of offshore accounts and shell corporations could constitute violations of campaign finance laws, money laundering statutes, or tax regulations. The complexity of the financial networks exposed demanded thorough examination, but the consensus was clear. This was not merely a political scandal, it was a potential legal crisis. The public, meanwhile, was swept up in the unfolding drama. Online forums buzzed with speculation about the possible consequences for Trump Jr. and the broader Trump organization. Conversations in homes, cafes, and workplaces reflected a mix of outrage, disbelief, and weary resignation. For many, the revelation was a stark reminder of the persistent challenges in holding powerful figures accountable. As the hours passed, the media cycle accelerated. Interviews with whistleblowers and former insiders added new layers to the narrative, each account reinforcing the gravity of the situation. Documentaries and opinion pieces proliferated, aiming to contextualize the evidence within the larger story of political corruption and systemic secrecy. The live broadcast itself became a pivotal moment studied and restudied. Clips of Jasmine's precise delivery and Trump Jr.'s unraveling composure were dissected frame by frame. The power dynamics on display, a woman grounded in facts confronting a man caught off guard, resonated deeply with viewers across the political spectrum. Within political circles, the revelation forced recalibrations. Allies of Trump Jr. faced difficult choices, weighing loyalty against the mounting evidence and public backlash. Opponents seized the opportunity to amplify calls for accountability, seeing Jasmine's courage as a catalyst for broader change. Yet, amidst the whirlwind, questions remained. Would legal authorities launch formal investigations? Could the Trump organization withstand the mounting pressure? How would this revelation influence upcoming elections and the balance of power? The answers were far from certain, but one fact was undeniable. The political landscape had shifted irrevocably. As the night deepened, the media frenzy showed no signs of abating. News outlets pivoted to explore the human dimensions of the story, the personal toll on those involved, the impact on public trust, and the broader implications for democracy itself. Jasmine Crockett emerged not just as an accuser, but as a symbol of relentless pursuit of truth in a time rife with obfuscation. The revelation, amplified by the relentless machinery of modern media, transcended its initial context to become a moment of collective reckoning. It exposed the fragility of carefully maintained facades and the power of truth when wielded with courage and clarity. In the wake of this media storm, the nation was left to grapple with the stark reality. In the age of instant communication and relentless scrutiny, no secret remains buried forever. The media's role as both informer and amplifier had transformed a single confrontation into a movement demanding transparency and justice. The story of Jasmine Crockett and Donald Trump Jr. was no longer confined to the studio's four walls. It had entered the collective consciousness, shaping conversations and challenging perceptions. The revelation had set in motion a cascade of consequences, its echoes destined to influence the political, legal, and cultural arenas for months, perhaps years to come. As dawn approached, the media frenzy persisted, fueled by new developments and ongoing debates. Yet, beneath the surface noise, a profound truth settled. The exposure of hidden realities, when met with fearless resolve, possesses the power to reshape narratives and challenge entrenched power. And so, the stage was set not just for legal battles or political skirmishes, but for a profound confrontation between secrecy and accountability, between denial and truth. The media frenzy was only the beginning. The moment Donald Trump Jr. felt the walls closing in on live television. His carefully maintained composure began to unravel. What had started as a calculated display of confidence now teetered on the edge of chaos alive, emotional breakdown that would be etched in the public consciousness as one of the most raw, revealing moments of his political career. At first, his responses were the usual rehearsed denials, sharp, clipped, and defensive. But as Jasmine Crockett's relentless questioning pressed deeper, exposing layers of financial deceit, his defenses cracked. His voice, once steady and authoritative, took on a brittle edge, the cracks in his armor widening with each passing second. "I have never authorized any of these so-called transactions," he insisted, eyes flashing with a mixture of anger and desperation. "This is nothing but a political hit job, an orchestrated campaign to destroy my family and my name." His tone rose, the strain unmistakable, betraying the pressure building behind his words. The studio audience watched in stunned silence, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Trump Jr.'s gestures grew more erratic, hands clenched, fingers tapping nervously on the desk, eyes darting away to avoid direct confrontation. The veneer of control dissolved into raw emotion, frustration, fear, and a hint of panic. "You think you can just throw around accusations without proof?" he snapped, voice trembling slightly. "I'm telling you, this is fabricated. Lies designed to tear down everything we've built." But even as he spoke, the evidence Jasmine presented lingered like a shadow over his words. The documents, the testimonies, the unbroken trail of financial transactions all pointed to a truth he could neither deny nor fully confront. Jasmine, sensing the moment, held her ground. Her voice remained steady, infused with a quiet strength. That contrasted sharply with Trump Jr.'s unraveling demeanor. "This isn't about personal attacks. It's about accountability. When financial misconduct threatens the integrity of our democracy, it's not just your legacy at stake, it's the trust of every citizen." The emotional intensity escalated. Trump Jr.'s attempts to regain control faltered, his replies becoming fragmented, almost defensive in their rapidity. "You're twisting everything. I've done nothing wrong. This is a smear campaign, pure and simple." Yet beneath the bluster, a flicker of vulnerability emerged. For the first time publicly, the man who had long wielded denial as a weapon showed signs of genuine distress. The weight of exposure, the erosion of invulnerability, was palpable. The host, attempting to moderate, interjected cautiously, but the damage was done. The meltdown had become the story itself, in moment where political theater bled into human fragility. Viewers at home saw not just a politician under fire, but a man grappling with the consequences of a lifetime of secrecy and evasion. Media erupted instantly. Clips of the meltdown circulated endlessly, each share amplifying the drama. Memes mocked the desperation. Analysts dissected his every gesture and inflection. The narrative quickly shifted from questioning the facts to witnessing a man visibly broken by the exposure. Legal experts weighed in, interpreting the emotional collapse as a sign of deepening trouble. Some suggested it indicated awareness of guilt. Others warned it reflected the immense pressure of impending investigations. Whatever the interpretation, the meltdown signaled a turning point, one that no amount of spin or denial could erase. For Jasmine, the moment was bittersweet. While the unraveling of her opponent was a victory in exposing truth, it also revealed the human cost of political battles. She maintained her composure, but inside, she understood the gravity of what had transpired, not just for Trump Jr., but for the country watching this drama unfold. The emotional breakdown also raised profound questions about power and vulnerability. In politics, how often do public figures hide behind facades, only to fracture when confronted with relentless truth? How does the exposure of hidden realities transform the individuals and systems that have long resisted scrutiny? As the broadcast continued, the dialogue took on a new dimension, less about facts and figures, more about the raw interplay of human emotion and political consequence. Jasmine's steady voice acted as a counterbalance to the storm, embodying resilience and resolve. The meltdown crystallized a deeper truth. Political power, no matter how entrenched, is fragile when confronted by unwavering courage and unvarnished truth. In that vulnerability lay both the tragedy and the possibility of transformation. In the days following, the meltdown dominated headlines. Analysts revisited the footage repeatedly, debating its significance. Supporters rallied around Jasmine's bravery. Critics questioned the fairness of public shaming. But across the spectrum, the consensus was clear. This was a moment that defined the political and emotional stakes in a way words alone could not capture. For Trump Jr., the path forward was uncertain. The public exposure of his breakdown stripped away layers of carefully crafted invincibility, leaving him exposed to legal scrutiny, political backlash, and personal reckoning. For the nation, the meltdown was a stark reminder of the human cost. Behind political scandals, the emotional toll, the unmasking of personas, and the fragile intersection between power and accountability. And for Jasmine Crockett, it was a moment that underscored the weight of her mission. The pursuit of truth was not just a political act, but a moral imperative, demanding resilience even in the face of chaos. As the broadcast faded, the country remained captivated not merely by the revelations themselves, but by the raw, unfiltered human drama that had played out live on air. The meltdown was more than spectacle. It was a profound moment of reckoning, setting the stage for the battles yet to come. In that intense, unraveling moment, the fragile boundaries between politics and humanity blurred, revealing a truth that no amount of denial could conceal. The cost of hiding behind lies is the loss of control, and the birth of a reckoning that no one can escape. Asterisk, even as the storm raged around her, Jasmine Crockett remained a pillar of unwavering resolve. The emotional tempest that had engulfed Donald Trump Jr. on live television only strengthened her conviction. Truth must not only be spoken, but fiercely defended, no matter the cost. This chapter of the story was not just about exposing hidden financial dealings. It was about the moral responsibility that comes with uncovering systemic deceit and standing firm against entrenched power. Behind Jasmine's calm exterior lay years of relentless preparation and deeply held ideals. She was no stranger to adversity or high-stakes battles. From her early days as a civil rights attorney to her rise as a formidable political voice, Jasmine had cultivated a resilience that transcended political rhetoric. Her pursuit of justice was personal, forged in the crucible of witnessing countless lives upended by corruption and inequality. As the live confrontation unfolded, Jasmine's mind was clear and focused. Every word, every gesture was purposefully crafted to illuminate the truth, while maintaining the dignity of discourse. She understood that exposing Donald Trump Jr.'s financial misdeeds was more than a political victory. It was a moment that could inspire a broader reckoning with systemic corruption. Her resolve was palpable to everyone watching. In a world too often dominated by spin and evasions, Jasmine's steadfast commitment to transparency was a beacon. When she spoke of accountability, her voice carried the weight of real experience and an unshakable belief in the power of truth. "I'm not here to destroy anyone's reputation," she said quietly but firmly during the broadcast's quieter moments. "I'm here because our democracy depends on honesty." When leaders manipulate the system for personal gain, the consequences ripple through every community. The studio's charged atmosphere softened slightly as Jasmine articulated the moral stakes. Her words resonated with many who felt betrayed by political elites who prioritized power over principle. She was not just a challenger. She was a representative of hope, a reminder that courage and integrity could prevail. Asterisk. Outside the studio, Jasmine's stance sparked a wave of support. Activists, legal experts, and ordinary citizens echoed her call for accountability. Her public appearances following the revelation were marked by a surge of engagement, with many drawn to her message of unwavering resolve in the face of intimidation. Yet Jasmine knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. Exposing powerful figures invited fierce backlash, personal attacks, and attempts to undermine credibility. But she was prepared. Years of experience had taught her that the pursuit of justice demanded stamina as much as strategy. Her inner circle, trusted advisors and colleagues, stood firmly behind her. They recognized the significance of the moment and the importance of sustaining momentum beyond a single televised confrontation. Together, they planned legal steps, community outreach, and public education campaigns aimed at translating revelation into real change. At the core of Jasmine's resolve was a belief that truth was a living force, capable of transforming not just individuals, but entire systems. She envisioned a future where transparency was not the exception, but the norm, where accountability was a constant and corruption an anomaly. Her personal story intertwined with this vision. Raised in communities affected by economic disparity and political neglect, Jasmine had witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of unchecked power. Her advocacy was a reflection of those experiences, a commitment to ensuring that no one, regardless of status, was above the law. During the live broadcast, Jasmine's demeanor exemplified this ethos, while Trump Jr.'s responses grew erratic and defensive. She remained composed, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. The contrast underscored a larger truth. Resilience is not the absence of pressure, but the mastery of it. In interviews following the broadcast, Jasmine reflected on the significance of maintaining integrity under fire. "It's easy to speak truth when the spotlight is warm and welcoming," she said. "The real test is standing firm when the opposition turns fierce, when the stakes are personal, and when silence would be easier." This moral clarity earned Jasmine respect across the political spectrum. Even some critics acknowledged her courage and dedication, recognizing that her actions transcended partisan divides. Her resolve became a rallying point, inspiring others to demand greater transparency and ethical governance. The chapter also explored the emotional toll such resolve exacted. Jasmine was not immune to fatigue or doubt. The pressures of public scrutiny, the weight of responsibility, and the ever-present threat of retaliation were constant companions. But she found strength in her purpose, in the knowledge that her efforts were part of a larger movement toward justice. Throughout the unfolding saga, Jasmine's resilience provided a counterpoint to the chaos surrounding Trump Jr. Her unwavering stance illuminated the path forward, a path where truth was weaponized, not for destruction, but for renewal. In the broader narrative, this chapter served as a meditation on courage, the courage to confront uncomfortable realities, to challenge power without fear, and to remain anchored in principles even when the world seemed intent on distraction. Jasmine Crockett's journey was emblematic of a new generation of leaders rising to reclaim the moral high ground. Her example suggested that in the age of misinformation and political theater, authenticity and resolve could still resonate powerfully. As the chapter drew to a close, the story hinted at the difficult road ahead. The battle for accountability was far from over. The forces of denial and deflection remained strong, and the legal and political challenges were only beginning. But Jasmine's unwavering resolve ensured that the truth would continue to shine a light cutting through darkness, a voice refusing to be silenced, and a promise that justice, no matter how delayed, would be pursued relentlessly. The nation watched and waited, inspired by a figure who embodied the conviction that real change starts with the courage to speak and stand for the truth. The revelation Jasmine Crockett brought to light did not exist in a vacuum it carried. a potential to reshape legal realities and reverberate through the corridors of justice. As the evidence of Donald Trump Jr.'s entanglement with offshore accounts and obfuscated campaign funds emerged, legal experts, investigators, and political watchdogs sharpened their focus on what this could mean beyond the media spectacle. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, and complex financial webs have long been tools employed by powerful individuals to mask the flow of money, evade taxes, or circumvent campaign finance laws. The documents Jasmine revealed exposed a labyrinthine structure transactions rooted through multiple entities, deliberately designed to obscure ownership and accountability. Such mechanisms, while not illegal per se, often skirt dangerously, close to violations of law when linked to political funding and undisclosed contributions. Legal analysts quickly began parsing the evidence, noting several potential avenues for investigation. Campaign finance law experts emphasized the importance of transparency, noting that funds used to support political campaigns must be fully disclosed to maintain the integrity of the democratic process. The concealment of contributions through offshore accounts raised serious questions about whether laws were intentionally circumvented to hide sources or amounts of funding. Further, the involvement of shell companies raised red flags concerning money laundering statutes. By funneling money through layered entities, individuals can disguise the origin of funds, enabling illicit financial activities. The evidence pointed toward a deliberate effort to create distance between donors and recipients, a tactic prosecutors often scrutinize closely. Tax law experts also weighed in, highlighting the potential for tax evasion or fraud if financial activities were misrepresented or concealed from regulatory authorities. The complexity of the transactions suggested an intent to exploit loopholes or obscure taxable income. The broader legal implications were compounded by ongoing investigations into the Trump Organization and related entities. Jasmine's revelation added a new layer of detail that could strengthen cases or prompt fresh inquiries. Congressional committees, federal prosecutors, and regulatory bodies were watching closely, with some already indicating a willingness to expand their probes based on the surfaced evidence. The gravity of these legal ramifications injected a new urgency into the political discourse. Jasmine's disclosure was no longer just a public scandal. It was a potential catalyst for formal investigations, subpoenas, and legal proceedings. The prospect of criminal charges, civil suits, or regulatory penalties loomed as plausible outcomes, depending on the findings. In public commentary, legal experts stressed the importance of due process, cautioning against premature judgments while acknowledging the seriousness of the allegations. They emphasized that the evidence presented, while compelling, would require thorough examination, forensic accounting, and corroborating testimony to build a prosecutable case. The unfolding legal drama also highlighted the challenges faced by law enforcement in tackling financial crimes entwined with political power. Complex corporate structures, international jurisdictions, and high-profile defendants create formidable barriers to accountability. Jasmine's revelation pierced these defenses, offering a rare glimpse into the concealed mechanisms often shielded from public view. This chapter also illuminated the intersection of law and politics, a delicate balance where legal processes must operate independently amid intense political pressure. The spotlight on Donald Trump Jr. intensified calls for impartial investigations, free from partisan influence. For Jasmine, understanding these legal ramifications was integral to her mission. She knew that exposing wrongdoing was only the first step. Ensuring that justice followed was a far more arduous battle. The legal system, with its complexities and challenges, was both an arena and an obstacle. Behind the scenes, her legal team coordinated with investigators and advocacy groups, strategizing how best to leverage the evidence to hold accountable. those who sought to evade scrutiny. The plan was multifaceted. Public pressure, congressional oversight, and judicial action all played vital roles. As the nation absorbed the potential consequences, the public's attention shifted toward questions of legal accountability. Could the evidence Jasmine unveiled lead to indictments or civil penalties? Would courts order financial disclosures or asset freezes? How might ongoing political careers be impacted by mounting legal challenges? The chapter underscored that, while political drama often plays out on televised stages and social media feeds, the ultimate reckoning occurs in courtrooms and regulatory agencies. The law, with its slow but deliberate processes, would determine the extent to which truth translated into justice. In this unfolding saga, Jasmine Crockett emerged not only as a political force, but as a catalyst for legal scrutiny. Her revelation demanded that hidden financial dealings face the light of law. Challenge 2. Entrenched power cloaked in complexity and privilege. The legal ramifications extended beyond one individual, highlighting systemic vulnerabilities in CAMPAIGN finance oversight and corporate transparency. The case became emblematic of broader concerns about the influence of money in politics and the mechanisms used to conceal it. As investigations progressed, the chapter painted a vivid picture of a justice system mobilizing under pressure, navigating labyrinthine evidence, political interference, and public expectations. It also foreshadowed difficult legal battles ahead, with high stakes for all parties involved. Ultimately, this chapter emphasized the profound importance of legal accountability in preserving democratic integrity. Jasmine's revelation was a clarion call for transparency and enforcement, underscoring that no one, regardless of status or influence, is above the law. The nation watched closely, recognizing that the consequences of this legal reckoning would ripple far beyond headlines, shaping political futures, reinforcing or undermining public trust, and defining the very contours of justice in a polarized era. The confrontation that ignited on live television between Jasmine Crockett and Donald Trump Jr. had unleashed a firestorm of public discourse, but it also exposed a deeper, more insidious battle raging beneath the surface, a battle over ideology, power, and the very soul of a nation. As the revelation about offshore accounts and campaign finance obfuscation spread, the divide between opposing political factions grew sharper, more entrenched, and charged with raw emotion. In the days following the broadcast, political operatives, commentators, and activists on all sides seized the moment to frame the narrative to their advantage. For supporters of Donald Trump Jr., the revelation was dismissed as yet another politically motivated smear, a coordinated attack engineered to delegitimize their movement and silence dissenting voices. Memes circulated portraying Jasmine as a radical zealot, intent on destroying a family legacy rather than seeking genuine justice. On the other side, Jasmine Crockett became a symbol of resistance, a fearless warrior standing against entrenched corruption and the abuse of power. Her unwavering resolve was celebrated as emblematic of a new era of political accountability. Social media rallies, town halls, and protests sprang up, calling for deeper investigations and systemic reform. This polarization was not merely ideological, it tapped into the core identities and values of millions. The financial revelations were interpreted through partisan lenses. One side saw evidence of corruption and betrayal of democratic principles. The other viewed an assault on their political heroes and a threat to their worldview. Within this charged atmosphere, the political discourse became a battlefield of rhetoric and emotion. Debates on news programs grew more heated, online forums overflowed with vitriol, and public officials issued statements that alternately condemned or defended the actions exposed. The country found itself at a crossroads, grappling with questions about trust, truth, and the limits of power. Jasmine, navigating this turbulent landscape, remained committed to her mission, but acutely aware of the challenges. The ideological battle threatened to obscure the core issues, the systemic abuses of power, and the need for transparency. She spoke often about the danger of allowing partisan divides to derail efforts for justice. This isn't about left or right, she emphasized in interviews and speeches. It's about the rule of law, about holding all accountable, regardless of political affiliation. When we let ideology cloud our judgment, we weaken the very foundations of our democracy. Meanwhile, Donald Trump Jr. and his allies doubled down, framing the revelations as a weaponized campaign by political elites determined to silence opposition. This narrative resonated deeply with their base, fueling further division and mistrust. The lines between political strategy and ideological conviction blurred, intensifying the emotional stakes. The ideological divide also manifested in legislative chambers, where calls for investigations clashed with efforts to deflect or dismiss the allegations. Congressional hearings became platforms for grandstanding as well as genuine inquiry, illustrating the complexity of seeking truth amid partisan rancor. Public opinion polls reflected the widening chasm. While a significant portion of the population expressed outrage and demanded accountability, another substantial group viewed the revelations skeptically, questioning motives and distrusting mainstream media narratives. This polarization complicated efforts to build consensus on reforms or legal actions. In communities across the nation, conversations mirrored this divide. Families, workplaces, and social circles grappled with the emotional weight of the scandal, often revealing fractures along political and ideological lines. The personal became political in profound ways, as trust in institutions and leaders was tested. Amid the fervor, Jasmine sought to bridge the divide, emphasizing common values and the shared responsibility of citizenship. She advocated for dialogue rooted in facts and mutual respect, warning that the erosion of civic discourse threatened the country's democratic fabric. Her efforts met resistance, but also found allies in unexpected places, individuals and groups, willing to rise above partisan battles in pursuit of truth and justice. Together, they championed transparency initiatives, electoral reforms, and public education campaigns aimed at rebuilding trust. This chapter highlighted the complex interplay between ideology and accountability, a reminder that exposing truth is only the first step in a longer, more difficult journey toward justice. The battle for hearts and minds was as crucial as the legal battles unfolding behind the scenes. Through this lens, the political and emotional drama surrounding Jasmine and Donald Trump Jr. was a microcosm of broader societal challenges. It revealed how deeply politics shapes perceptions of truth, how power struggles exploit division, and how courage and conviction are essential to overcoming entrenched barriers. As the chapter drew to a close, the nation stood at a precipice, facing a choice between further polarization or the possibility of renewal. The ideological battle that followed the revelation was ongoing, shaping discourse and influencing the course of democracy itself. Jasmine Crockett's role in this struggle transcended the immediate scandal. She became a symbol of the fight to reclaim democracy from the grip of division and deception. Her voice echoed as a call to rise above factionalism and to hold fast to principles that unite rather than divide. In a time marked by distrust and fragmentation, the ideological battle illuminated the fragile balance between power and responsibility, between identity and integrity. The story was far from over, but the stakes had never been clearer. The nation watched, listened, and debated, caught in a moment where truth, ideology, and justice collided with profound consequences. The revelation that ignited a media firestorm. And political upheaval was not merely a fleeting spectacle. It marked the beginning of a profound shift in public trust and political accountability. As the nation grappled with the fallout from Jasmine, Crockett's explosive confrontation with Donald Trump Jr., the broader implications for democracy, governance, and civic engagement came sharply into focus. Trust, the fragile foundation upon which democratic institutions rest, had been severely shaken. For years, whispers of financial improprieties and shadowy dealings had lingered on the periphery of public discourse, often dismissed as partisan noise or conspiracy theories. Jasmine's meticulously documented evidence forced those whispers into the spotlight, demanding attention and, most importantly, demanding accountability. The erosion of trust extended beyond any single individual or political faction. It spoke to a systemic problem: the growing distance between political elites and the citizens they serve, a widening chasm fueled by secrecy, misinformation, and perceived impunity. When those entrusted with power are seen to manipulate systems for personal gain, public cynicism deepens and faith in democratic processes weakens. Jasmine understood this dynamic intimately. Her work was not only about exposing wrongdoing, but about rebuilding the bridges of trust that corruption and denial had burned. She spoke passionately about the need for transparency, ethical leadership, and a reinvigorated commitment to public service. This moment calls for more than just revelations, she said during a national address. It demands a renewed pledge to honesty, fairness, and accountability. Our democracy can only thrive when the people believe their leaders are working for them, not above them. The public's reaction was complex and multifaceted. Many who had long felt disenfranchised found in Jasmine's courage a voice for their frustrations and hopes. Grassroots movements surged, calling for reforms ranging from campaign finance transparency to stricter enforcement of ethics laws. Civic organizations mobilized to educate voters about the importance of holding elected officials accountable. Yet, rebuilding trust was no simple task. The polarized political environment complicated efforts to forge consensus on reforms. Skepticism ran deep, and many viewed new promises with suspicion, questioning whether change was truly possible or just political theater. Media coverage reflected this tension. While some outlets championed Jasmine's revelations as a turning point, others framed the ongoing debates as evidence of entrenched partisanship and gridlock. The fragmented media landscape mirrored the divisions within society, sometimes amplifying distrust rather than alleviating it. Within government, the revelation spurred a range of responses. Some lawmakers embraced calls for increased oversight and accountability measures. Legislative proposals targeting campaign finance reform, transparency in political donations, and enhanced whistleblower protections gained traction. However, opposition from powerful interests slowed progress, illustrating the challenges of institutional change. Legal and regulatory agencies faced pressure to act decisively. Investigations were launched or intensified, with some officials pledging to follow the evidence wherever it led. Yet the pace of legal proceedings contrasted sharply with the public's demand for swift justice, leading to frustration and calls for reform of investigative processes. Amid these dynamics, Jasmine Crockett emerged as both a leader and a symbol. Her insistence on truth and accountability resonated with a public hungry for integrity, but also wary of political grandstanding. She balanced advocacy with pragmatism, pushing for tangible outcomes while acknowledging the complexity of systemic change. Her approach emphasized the interconnectedness of trust, transparency, and democratic vitality. She urged citizens not only to demand accountability, but to engage actively in the political process, to vote, to speak out, and to hold leaders to their commitments. The chapter also explored the psychological dimensions of eroded trust. Scholars and commentators examined how repeated scandals and denials create a cycle of disillusionment, disengagement, and polarization. Restoring trust, they argued, requires not only institutional reforms, but cultural shifts toward openness and shared Responsibility. Jasmine's revelation thus served as a catalyst for a broader conversation about the health of democracy itself. It exposed vulnerabilities, but also illuminated pathways toward renewal through transparency, civic education, and ethical leadership. In communities across the country, the impact was tangible. Town halls, forums, and grassroots gatherings discussed the implications of the scandal and debated the future of political accountability. Citizens expressed a mixture of anger, hope, and resolve, a complex emotional landscape reflecting the stakes of the moment. The chapter concluded by emphasizing that trust, once broken, is painstaking to rebuild. It requires consistent, visible commitment and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Jasmine Crockett's role was pivotal in initiating this process, but the journey belonged to the nation as a whole. As the story unfolded, the erosion and potential restoration of trust became a central theme. Reminder that democracy depends not only on laws and institutions, but on the faith and engagement of its people. The nation stood at a crossroads, either to succumb to cynicism and division or to embrace the hard work of rebuilding trust and reaffirming the principles that bind a democratic society together. The revelation had opened the door. What came next depended on the collective will to walk through it. The live confrontation between Jasmine Crockett and Donald Trump Jr. was more than just a clash of personalities. It was a seismic event that reverberated across the political landscape, triggering immediate and far-reaching repercussions. As the dust settled from the on-air meltdown and media frenzy, the consequences of that explosive moment began to take shape, setting in motion a cascade of reactions from political allies, opponents, and institutions alike. Within hours, political operatives scrambled to assess the damage. For Trump Jr.'s camp, damage control became the urgent priority. Strategies were deployed to contain the fallout. Carefully crafted statements emphasized loyalty, deflected blame, and attempted to undermine Jasmine's credibility. Supporters rallied on social media, framing the revelation as a partisan attack and calling for solidarity against what they deemed an orchestrated smear. Conversely, Jasmine's allies seized the moment as validation of their cause. Her courage in confronting entrenched power inspired renewed calls for accountability and reform. Advocacy groups amplified her message, urging legislative bodies to take swift action and investigators to pursue all leads. The political calculus extended to elected officials. Some, wary of association, publicly distanced themselves from Trump Jr., while others doubled down on defense, viewing the situation through the lens of political allegiance and survival. The episode intensified existing factional divides, turning what might have been a single scandal into a broader battle over influence and ideology. Institutional responses followed suit. Congressional committees announced plans to probe the financial evidence Jasmine exposed, signaling potential hearings and subpoenas. Federal agencies reviewed ongoing investigations, assessing whether the new information warranted expansion or accelerated action. The reverberations extended internationally as regulatory bodies and foreign governments took note of the offshore account revelations, raising questions about cross-border financial scrutiny. The consequences also rippled through the Trump organization's business dealings. Partners, investors, and clients expressed concern over reputational risks, leading to strained relationships and public distancing. Legal teams prepared for potential litigation, compliance reviews, and asset assessments. The unfolding crisis underscored the vulnerabilities inherent in mixing business, politics, and concealed finances. Public opinion shifted in response to the revelations and ensuing fallout. Polls indicated a decline in Trump Jr.'s favorability ratings, while support for Jasmine and calls for transparency increased. The episode became a rallying point in upcoming election campaigns, with candidates leveraging the scandal to highlight issues of ethics and governance. Media coverage evolved from immediate reactions to in-depth investigations, interviews, and exposes. Journalists pursued follow-up stories, tracking developments and uncovering related threads. The narrative matured from a sensational moment to a sustained scrutiny of systemic issues, maintaining public attention and pressure. On a personal level, the consequences weighed heavily on those involved. Trump Jr.'s public image suffered significant blows, and his political ambitions faced new hurdles. Jasmine, though buoyed by support, encountered intensified scrutiny, personal attacks, and the immense responsibility of being a lightning rod for national debate. This chapter illuminated how a single moment of truth-telling can disrupt established power dynamics and trigger cascading consequences across political, legal, business, and social spheres. It underscored the interconnectedness of public exposure, institutional response, and societal change. As the nation absorbed the gravity of the fallout, the story continued to unfold each consequence, shaping the trajectory of justice, accountability, and democratic resilience. The explosive revelation had set off a chain reaction whose impact would resonate far beyond the initial confrontation, redefining the boundaries of political power and public trust. In the unfolding saga, Jasmine Crockett's courage catalyzed consequences that challenged entrenched interests and demanded a reckoning. The nation watched closely, aware that the path forward would be fraught with conflict, but hopeful that accountability might prevail amid the turmoil.